going to share the screen.
Okay.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining What's the 411? We have a very special guest for you guys today. So I just want to make sure that you guys are ready for this great conversation, all right? Right now, we're going to head into a little bit of some entertainment before we really start the interview, all right? So tap in. All right, guys, I am extremely excited to have here as my special guest for today, Monday, April 20. Can you believe it's Monday, April 24th already? But anyways, our special guest, Mr. Robert Bennett of Silence Violence and Shun the Guns. So introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you for your introduction. I am Robert Bennett. I'm the individual who started Silence of Violence and Shun the Guns back in 2010. So that is now 12 years. And I had, prior to that, I have many years experiences in areas such as economics and finance, which attributes to our success, I believe, in a huge way. Why we were able to connect and gain a loyal following for 12 years in one of the most difficult and can be extremely cold markets. So we're talking about the Toronto Financial District, could be equivalent on the other side of the border, which would be Black Wall Street, and also Yorkville, so Rodeo Drive. So these are the communities we started our outreach initiative, and we built a foundation, and that was our base, and we grew from there. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to share with what we've been doing at this point in time. I am, in fact, doing my very first interview with the media, as I'd like to loosely refer to as, but this isn't any normal or extreme type of media. We're talking about safe media, and safe media are media that engage in actions that discredits Black people, profits off Black peoples, and they do not make right the wrongs that they have made. So I'm very reluctant to respond. In fact, if you go onto our website under media regulations, you'll notice that we have an application. They have to fill an application to get an interview, and there's a lot of terms and conditions. It's a wall, but it's not an impenetrable wall. There's just certain things that we're not prepared to do, and we've operated that from day one. And perhaps they may come along at some point, but to be honest with you, I don't think we really require them at this time. Like other organizations that are in this particular area rely heavily on the media, and almost would suggest that they condone the things that they've done and are doing And that sends a bad message because if we're not concerned as a Black community, why should anyone else be? So here I am, and I'm going to share information that you might find interesting. I think it's vitally important. I left a career. In fact, I was earning most money than most Black people in this country, and I left it in order to take on this. And now we are the leading anti-youth gangs and gun violence organization by far. And I can prove that in many facets. But what's interesting is that we're we haven't implemented anything yet. It's 12 years because this is done on a grassroots level, developed and supported through the items that we sell, which we have over 100 items, services that we offer to fund this initiative. The conversation, circling back to what I was talking about originally, this conversation began where we were distributing a catalog of publications and that we created, and to all kinds of people, but mainly in the high-end areas. And these conversations that were very intelligent, very insightful, were opening people's minds where they realized, you're right. Like, if you see these stereotypes that we know people, we have family, friends, whoever they may be, and we don't see them being represented. We're seeing a lot of negativity, trauma, disparity, things of that nature over and over and over again. And it seems to me it's a one-sided conversation that's being taken, or narrative. And because of that content, it's extremely dangerous. And my thought is that we have to do something about it. And I could sit back and write a check. That'd be easy every year. But I also thought that that the community could be managed a lot better than the way it was. And I haven't seen much changes, and that's not necessarily mean that there hasn't much changes in terms of what those who are trying are doing. It's just that I haven't seen anything significant since we've started. So what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks is going to have an impact. There's no question about that. And we can talk about that further. So that's my opening statement.
Well, I'm definitely honored to have you here. I appreciate you, taking on the invite and coming through to share all the information that you have. And I feel honored that we are your very first interview. This is very
Yes,
special.
you are. You're very skilled. You're very skilled to get the first interview. I don't know how you did it, but here we are.
I managed to lock it in. I didn't even fill out the form, guys. I didn't even fill out the form.
Safe media does not have to fill it any online. See, that's the thing, right? That's for certain types of media, right? It's not, if I can identify and I feel comfortable that there are fact safe media, there's no need for them to fill out an application. There's no need for them to start talking about that there's going to be a speaking fee for them to have me on. None of that stuff applies, right? Because I know that they haven't done any damage, so there's no retribution that needs to be looked at. So that's why people like yourselves, and there's going to probably be others that I'm going to do interviews. Those things do not apply to them. So but yes, you are the very first one, and I want to try to be helpful in terms of helping your platform grow as well, because we've done very well. Our social media presence is extremely strong. In fact, it's stronger than all the other ones combined. And I'm not saying that to brag. Those are the numbers. And the numbers is what drives our decisions and why we are where we are. We don't base our decisions on emotional urges. They're based on statistical, economic science is a big part of it. That's why a lot of these people in the financial district right away, because they understood what economic science is. If you notice other people that maybe are in poverty, or they've never really been introduced to that type of ideology or system when it comes to managing finances, they won't be able to appreciate it. I don't know everything either. So, I mean, if someone says something to me, I might just find it to be awfully strange myself. And I'm sitting here going, well, it doesn't resonate with me, right? Um, but at the end of the day, I'm very selective when it comes to media because they're a big problem, and they're um, uh, most people like to try to get the least path of resistance, but it comes at a cost, right? When you're on there and you're engaging with them, you're in fact endorsing what they're doing, and unfortunately, that carries some consequences.
Very true. Very true. So take us back to 2010. You're a numbers guy. You were, on doing your thing on the financial district, and then you decided to put that all aside. You mentioned you were, doing quite well, making some really good money. What was it that really had you leave the job or leave your place of work and start this movement?
Well, uh, for me, uh, I was seeing the same storyline over and over again. Is predictable. It's predictable to this day, where right around at this time, you start to see uh, increased activity when it comes to violence, and we're not only focus on gun violence. We also believe in violence against women is something that should never happen, including with that is also we got an LGBT community. So we even have merchandise for sale for those areas because we figure, okay, if we're going to go ahead with this gun violence initiative, it's not only about the kids in the hood, because those kids in the hood get to become adults and they can be violent against their spouses and girlfriends and wives. So this way, we're going to have a more inclusive type of approach. And so what I was noticing is that the same thing was happening over and over again. And then after you have the white supremacy system that says, well, we need to have more violence against the very people that are responsible for violence. But in fact, it's the white supremacists that are responsible for the violence because they economically disparage the communities. And then after people start making bad decisions and they're desperate and they need to feed themselves and things of that nature. Not saying that I endorse their decisions, it's just that they don't know on any other way. So, when I was a kid, maybe even into my adulthood, when I'd hear about someone robbing a bank, I'd say, well, that's just a bad person or a bad group of people that are robbing banks for their own personal greed. Well, I realized after, I got into my career that, and I was looking at it from that perspective, right? Because it's all about um, tracing and charting out people's lifestyles over a period of time, right? So from the time that they're able to earn an income to the time they're ready to retire, right? And then after there's generational succession and estate planning and all these other things, right? So a person who decides to rob a bank, does some form of crime that is economically motivated. The reason why these people are doing it is because they don't know how to address their problem. Okay, so you're not going to find a neurosurgeon, okay, leaving in lunchtime and going and robbing a bank, right? Because he or she has their economic situation under control to some degree. They're earning income, probably living a pretty good life because it pays pretty good, right? But if you look at the people that are ending up incarcerated, you're not finding very many people that have the education in the financial world that were engaged in things that makes them proportionately more in numbers than the rest of the general population. If you look at the educational system, for example, look at our curriculum. Like, they don't even teach us how to fill out a basic income tax return, and that's an essential thing that needs to be done. And yet they're just firing people through their educational system over and over again. So the question needs to be asked is, why isn't that a mandatory thing when it's mandatory and expected for you to do every year, right? Um, the system is designed in order to minimize, or if they can, bring down to zero the common individuals from raising up and competing with the super wealthy, right? Because if they teach them how to compete, to do what they do, or they become competitors, that's going to be a problem. They're cutting into their market share. And see, the thing is that when I hear from people who are critics of what we're doing, and they're saying, all kinds of wild statements, I'm yet to run into an individual that actually has the background in this area that actually has these types of statements. There are always individuals who don't have that type of knowledge, and and that's fine. I don't have a problem with what they have to say, but at the same time, what is your alternative solution? Because you're also asking the government to give money. You're blaming and shaming, complaining the government, and then what happens tomorrow? So okay, so let's go with the government, right? And so government's going to cut a check tomorrow morning to feed that kid, or is he going to go rob somebody tomorrow morning?
Good question.
Okay, and these are the bizarre things that go through my mind, and thinking that why would you discredit any organization that's trying to bring awareness? And, I find that the people in the financial district are just happy with awareness, because based on our experiences, they're not asking us, what do you guys have done? As they make another purchase year after year, every time they see us, right? They're not even under any form of obligation, monthly, yearly. You just come whenever you feel, inclined to buy something, you can, right? But here's what has happened, and I don't think they understand, because they're not out there. I'm talking about the other anti-youth gangs and gun violence organization, and this is very important to establish a base, right? Because then I think maybe if any of them happen to be listening, and all due respect, they're all doing what they know, or they're doing the best they can, but you have to look at it from more of a logical point of view, right? Those individuals were able to determine from a very early stage that myself and the people that were carrying my message, talking to my team, realized that I understood economic science, which is the same language that they speak and they utilize for their lives. So when they're watching this, and they talk to us, in the earlier stages in 2010, oh, gee, well, actually, 2010 was in formation year. 2011 is when we started introducing the items. So you can watch on our YouTube channel, Silence the Violence and Shun the Guns TV. There is a video, it's 11-minute, 36-second video. Listen to that. It'll tell you everything about our initiative from the time that we started all the way up to 2019, but I'm giving you a bit of a summary here. And so these individuals realize that, because if you're going to engage with a certain group of people, and especially the ones that will respond, because there are people that are out there that just barely, or they just don't interact with us. But the people that are consistently responding to our items, you better understand who they are, because if you don't understand how they operate, how they think, and you have a understanding what they're going to do before they're actually going to, do that action or say, once they realize that you understand who they are, any of the games that they sometimes play with people, right, stops, right? And they get serious, and then they start something, right? I also know that in the financial district, we tried a number of times to have marches with the people in the financial district, did it over 12 to 12:45. They didn't show up. We tried a number of times, because people who are wealthy tend not to complain. They look for solutions, right? So when you're looking at these other anti-youth gangs and gun violence organizations, where are they from and who are they engaging with? They're engaging with other people, mainly that have grievances. They've had deaths, families. They're not really experienced in doing, outreach type of work. So when they try to engage with people, the same very people that we're engaging with, and we've developed relationships because relationships are everything. We can't have people buying stuff for 12 years without having some form of relationship with them. Okay. But if they don't understand who they are and they identify that you don't really understand who we are, like we could see you fit to our circle, or I view you as a peer, then you're going to get in nowhere, right? So the people in the financial district aren't and Yorkville aren't gonna, like, I've learned this, like, I'm not a professional when it comes to this type of stuff. What I thought was, okay, I know that the big part of it is the financial stability and prosperity of a community. It's a lifeline. If that's not operating to par, then you're going to have problems, right? So that's why I left a career in finance in order to, just because that's my area. Like, if somebody wins a lottery, most smart people would say, well, you know what? I need to get maybe a lawyer, an accountant, and what is the other individual? Person who knows money, right? Well, guess what? I'm right here, right? If somebody's finding that they're experiencing financial difficulty, probably the very same three people, right? My question that I ask is that, okay, then with these other organizations, where are your people that are in these professional areas? And if you're criticizing us, you're not helping your case by attracting anyone that could help you, because they realize, say, listen, what, it's not about we like him or not, talking about myself, right? It's about what he can actually do, right? We buy oil from Saudi Arabia. I don't know if anyone really likes Saudi Arabian people, but they do business with them, right? So when I look at this, I don't care if somebody likes me or not. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to execute an initiative. And, nothing is going to deter me from achieving that. So I'm not concerned per se what other anti-youth gangs and gun violence organizations have to say necessarily, and they have been critical, but I could think of when we first started out in 2011, no one really knew who we were. I think we're really the only anti-youth gangs and gun violence organization that was in Ontario. No, I wouldn't say that. Active. There may have been one or two, but they weren't really progressive. Let's put it that way. They weren't, like, there's certain types of people that are out there that are able to create power, and they're able to build momentum, you know. And unfortunately, most of these anti-youth gangs and gun violence organizations are run by Black people, self-appointed, just like myself, right? And what I do learn, and what I do now know for sure, is that it doesn't matter what it is. Some Black people find other Black people who have power as a threat. Okay. I could show you many examples of that. That is a fact, right? They want to have the limelight. They figure that because, that they kind of been, recognized, but they're not making any real progress, that they should maintain those types of positions. My thought is that, okay, well, maybe you've done as much as you can. I mean, or you're prepared to do, right? Because we're, myself and our team, we're not superheroes. We're not doing anything different than they could do. It's a question of what you want to do. I'll use Michael Jordan, for example. He just outworks everybody. He wants to be the best, and he's going to do what it takes, right? Another person would be like a Kobe Bryant. Like, you look at the superstars, they're going to great lengths that their God-given abilities able to do to achieve this superstar status. In our case, I'm not suggesting that we're superstars and that saying, well, we're the superstar, but the results and the where we're sitting at speaks for itself. In fact, we don't have to say anything at this point. We're only are taking another step that is going to change everything. And I believe that people over the years are convinced that we are serious. They've also said that many times in the early stages, oh, you guys are organized, in a surprising tone, because unfortunately, Black people tend to be disorganized. I'm not that type of person. So you see, the thing is that when I was first introducing myself and engaging with the financial district, right, in Yorkville, I don't have to tell them in finance. For the ones that are in it, they knew that I was, because there's certain things that are being said and being done that only somebody in that particular industry would know. That's how I was able to capture them, right? And you know, they 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 have like a mental checklist. So when they first talk to us in the initial stages, they're going check, 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 check. Okay, great. I'm going to make a purchase today, and they go on their way, right? Next time around, they just say, hey, listen, do you have any other publications? Because in the earlier stages, we're selling these publications, right? Black Heroes, because, again, I'm concerned about the media. And in the publication, it was talking about silence the violence and shun the guns. At that point, we weren't wearing our logo related items. Like I'm wearing a t-shirt today. You may not be able to see it, but you can see there it says volunteer, right? And it's got the gun, right? So we wear that front and back, right? And but back then we were not wearing, we were wearing suits. We were in places like in the financial district. We're in places like the COC, which is the Canadian Opera Company. These are super exclusive areas, and they're eating it up, especially at the CUC. They're buying our Black Heroes publication for the opera. So I had all these different publications over the years. I created all these ones: Powerful Woman, Asian Heroes, Gay Heroes, ones for hockey, basketball, football, for different times of the year, Remembrance Day, all these different things. So these publications were designed to introduce the Silence, Violence, and Shun the Guns initiative that we're developing. It's because of them why we got where we are, right? And even though I noticed that they weren't asking us how we were progressing, they could see that we're progressing, right? So sometimes I remember I was just talking to a man over at the baseball game, because we're trying to get around all the different areas before we get into our launch, because I'm just not going to be around that area anymore. The plan is to be in a specific spot, a location. And then maybe at that point, I may introduce the media to come in, but not for personal interview, but for them to report on it. And for all those people that have seen us in all the different areas in the GTA, they say, oh, I remember that guy. Oh, so he's down there. Okay, well, I'm going down there. I'm going to support it, because I knew their intuitions will be confirmed from way back to all the way up here. See, the thing is that I'm going to get into races right now. Black people, you tell them, hey, listen, we're working on a project. They're going to give you a million questions, give you every reason why they shouldn't. You somehow blood, sweat, and tears, because you say, I'm only Black, right? I'm doing this only Black. You say you start a mall, a shopping mall, and people are now going in and out, spending money, and you're still going to have Black people asking a million questions. Any other race? Well, I'll use three for I know for sure. Brown community, India, for example. Asian people, China, particularly I'm thinking, and Europeans. Hey, we're starting a project. How much money can I put into it? That's it. Before you know it, they're breaking ground, they're building, and it's built in record time. And as soon as it's opened, there's people lined up, they're spending money, right? How do you compete with that? We have a huge paradigm if we're ever going to be able to survive. We're in a global marketplace. Like, I think what we don't realize is that we're in a highly competitive global marketplace, right? And if we don't get our affairs in order as a Black community, we will not survive. We can't. That's a reason why we're disproportionately more represented in prison. Because if we're economically stripped or disparaged, then what happens is that is the prelude to people engaging in illegal activity. And we all know what the next step, it's imprisonment, right? So unless we're prepared to focus on economic self-sufficiency, we're always going to have a problem. And the reason why I'm telling that is exactly how this initiative has been operating from day one. I've told people, known politicians, I'm not up, well, one known politician, everyone knows who this politician is. I'm not going to mention the person's name. And I told the politician, I said, we're going to reduce youth gangs and gun violence with or without you. And that was about, maybe about 6 years ago. So we were never close where we were, where we are right now. Because in my mind, there's not one single individual, entity, or corporation that is going to dictate this failure or success of this organization. We have to make sure that we're self-sufficient, and then you bring them in. See, here's where the problem begins. Like, when you talk about these anti-youth gangs and gun violence organizations and why they're not able to make these massive changes, and and for some of them, I think they've earned for those things to happen, but the problem in these situations is that, if you have, like, for example, a combination lock for a safe, right? And you have a series of numbers. All you need to do, or what needs to happen if you want to throw someone off, is just invert one of those numbers in the sequence, and that safe will never open. You have the numbers, but the numbers are not in the right sequence. And why I say that is because if you look at how they approach these types of things, they figure, well, the government has to be first foremost. No, it does not. You have to figure out how you're going to make sure that you're able to maintain a certain level of revenues that are coming into your initiative, your organization, so that you can maybe some time down the road get access to money to the government, but you shouldn't be focusing and saying, well, we're guaranteed to be good if we get access to the government's money. Remember, the government sanctions all these things, like the 150 years of slavery, the disproportionate amount of Black males, especially, that get killed by police. These things are all really sanctioned originally from the government. So what they're suggesting is that the chickens are expecting the fox to solve their problem and give them adequate money. Like, if you talk to anyone who understands mathematics, advanced mathematics, there's no way that they can make the rights wrong or wrongs right, sorry, by giving you the adequate funding to do that. I saw so how are you going to be able to solve your problem if the math tells you that there's no way, even if they wanted to do it? Because, see, what will happen is that we're way down here, and the government and white supremacists is way up here. So in order for them to do what's right, that means their lifestyle, they would have to volunteer to reduce their lifestyle in order for your lifestyle to go up. And if your lifestyle goes up, now you're potentially more of a threat than you were when you were at the bottom, right? And as long as they keep your foot on our necks, then after we'll never be able to resolve our issues. We'll be that proverbial milking cow, whatever we can get on. We're gonna steal hockey because hockey was invented by Black people, and the inventions like the internet and cell phone. We're if you come on our platform, there's only certain things that you can and cannot say, right? And you're going to be going after Black people too, and you're going to be calling them down, and they're going to say, well, we didn't have anything to do with it. If he's saying it, it has to be a bad, right? Because it's 1 years. No, that person's been essentially turned out and been sold their soul out for a paycheck, right? So mathematically, there's no factual information to support or to suggest that that will ever happen. So why focus your attention on something that the chances are so remote? And at the same time, you're saying somehow you are taking some real sincere steps to reduce gun violence, because a lot of this has to do with your quality of life. And if you're able to stabilize your quality of life and ensure that it's going to have an upward trajectory, then after you're always going to have these problems. You don't ever see any kids coming from Rosedale or Bridle Path here in Toronto that are involved in gun violence. They're always from all these other places: Jane and Finch, Regent Park, Melbourne, pockets in Scarborough. So how can you sit back and say, well, the financial part isn't your first number on that safe to open it? And why I use a series of numbers, because there are other things that are important too. Because you got to get your quality of life first, because that's going to dictate so many things. It's going to dictate how long you're going to live, because people generally that are in poverty live shorter lives. And then what about generational succession? Okay, there's no generational succession. What it is. It's generational poverty is what it is. Ideology and also trauma. So how are all these things beneficial? We go back to Africa and look at it. Like, we as Africans, we have a different, like, we're very spiritual individuals, right? Like, when people came in, colonizers, when they came along with the transatlantic slave trade, like, we were we're originally from the sun, right? And then you have you have Europeans that are from the ice, and then you have the brown people that are sand people, right? We never envisioned that any other outside entity would engage in the certain things that we've experienced and had traumatic effects on us in our existence. So what I've learned is that people, Africans, we don't know how to effectively protect assets and resources. I was watching a video. He's an elderly brother. He's talking. He says, we really are good at welcoming in our enemies. And why I'm telling you that is because if you go into any of those at-risk youth communities, those impoverished communities, what do you see there? You see certain types of outside people that don't live in the communities, run businesses in the communities, and the money leaves with them every day back to where their communities exist. So the communities are not being managed the way it should, because some of that money that's being spent by the community that supports that outsider that has no interest in investing in the community is costing us parks, recreations, and community centers. And those things are the anchors that keeps the kids in the communities, plus no jobs because they're running businesses and operating and doing whatever. And so now the community is an economic wasteland. And now that individual needs to live. So what he or she's going to do, they're going to go outside of their community They're going to go downtown to go get a job. They're going to have to commute outside their communities. Their jobs should be right inside their communities. And because those jobs are not right inside their communities, then after there's no sense of ownership or pride of your community, right? So when things happen and things of that nature, well, there's nothing that anchors me here. I'm only here because of the fact that it's this place I can around where I live in the community, and I just have to go a couple streets down, and that's where I go to work. And if I need to go to the rec center, it's maybe just maybe another couple of blocks over here, and there's parks over here. I want to take my kids over there. I can do this and that. They're more likely to stay in their communities. So when you're hearing about these shootings are happening these hours outside of the communities, is because it's just like an animal. If an animal is in an area where there's no food, what do you think that animal is eventually going to do? It's going to start foraging elsewhere. It's going to be looking other places for it, right? That's just human behavior, right? But that's what animals do. So until we're able to overhaul those communities, which is the next phase of what we're going to do, once we start and offering these employment opportunities, we get into that later. Then we need to start focusing our attention on overhauling the communities. Communities need to be self-sustainable. And, I know that there'll probably be a lot of resistance for people who have that. They may be traumatized, they may be uninformed, uneducated. But there's one thing that they can't say is that you've been doing the same thing for a very long time. Can you show me how you've made any progress over a certain window of time? If you could show me that there's significant changes positively for your community, and in other words, you're pulling out of this community, this impoverished community environment that you live in, then maybe we can have a talk. But to continue doing the same thing over and over again is what they say insanity is all about. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
And we've had this conversation before, talking about the mindset and how important it is to really change your mind about certain things. And so our community is, you mentioned a complaining mindset. Like we're stuck, I feel, in a kind of like a cycle or something. And I'm not sure how we can break out of that deteriorating mindset. Are there any suggestions that you would have that can help us to start thinking things through in a different manner?
Well, this goes back to what we're in the process of introducing very shortly. You have to start with the kids, and I know people say you got to start with the kids, but you got to start with the kids where they're actually able to empower themselves, so that other people realize, hey, look, these kids are doing something, and it's actually making things better. Maybe we should pay a little more attention to what they're doing. And that might lead to a point where they may say, hey, how can I, add on to what's going on? Look, there's going to be lots of people that you cannot change. In fact, they say that it's better to educate a child than to try to fix a broken man. So you're going to have people that are going to walk, that we're going to just have to walk away from, or it's got to leave them behind. There's nothing you can do, right? But you have to start with the children. And in fact, if you look at even Asian people, for example, they're a great example of this. At age 3, as soon as they start talking, they're teaching about math and about how business operates. You look at Black people, what are we doing? They're buying them designer clothing. They're playing basketball. So in the end, you got to ask yourself a question like, who's going to be the employers and who's going to be employees? Right? Okay. And then some of us have the nerve to sit there and say that we're being oppressed, in the sense that we don't get the opportunities. But what have you been investing in terms of your time with your children, right? Well, how have you been leading them, right? We also have a lot of young mothers, right? And also fathers and their children themselves. You don't see that with Asians and brown people, for example. The Black community is rampant. Yes, and I understand why some of these things happens, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's helping by flooding communities with children and they're not being properly raised. You know what it's helping? It's helping fill those jails. So as I see it, that's how you're going to be able to penetrate something like that, right? You could bring in all the adult people, 30 and up, and talk to them. They've kind of have a paradigm, or a mentality where they're not going to be making any changes, and another thing is that you'll find, in economically impressed people that they're stuck on survival mode. There's nothing wrong with being in a survival mode, but you have to move on from that. You have to build, right? And I'll tell you this: the main reason why I went ahead and started this initiative with a grassroots approach is because I wanted to make sure that people understood that you can build something from a very, very small beginning and build it to a point where now, you know, um, it's arguably in the forefront of all the other organizations worldwide, right? So, you know, some people are going to still, it doesn't matter what we say, they're always going to have negative things to say about us. But for the others, who are looking at this from objectively, they say, well, based on what they just launched and what they're implementing, we're not surprised because we could see this building from all this period of time, right? And but for those who look at it from an emotional point of view, they have gripes with us, whatever, that's fine. But I always want to know what they're offering as an alternative. Like if you figure that you disapprove of what we're doing, what we've been building, you'd rather build a tent or erect a tent on a piece of land that you could do anything with it, and instead we're on the other side saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to dig and then put in like piles down and the foundation, and that's going to take a very long time because those things never do take they don't happen overnight. But if the person has this, because usually you'll see that in people that are of poverty mentality, right? They're looking for very short-term solutions. So I'm going to go back to these at-risk youth organizations, right? If you study what they're doing, they everything is based on some form of dependency type of um, uh, mentality. So, for example, like instead of saying, okay, well, let's go out and engage with the public, right, and build a following out there. No, well, I'm going to go to the media, but do you realize the media is anti-black, right? Well, no, but I want to get my message out there, right? Okay, that's one. Number two, they say, well, you're saying about black people complaining. Okay, so they're complaining and they're saying, well, then, okay, instead of us try to generate the money on our own, then what we're going to do is we're going to get the government to get us the money. Those are easy cop outs, and if you really start to think about those are solutions that are based on people who are of poverty mindset, right? Because the likeliness of those things actually getting anywhere are slim and next to none. They haven't really done the math to sit there and go, well, you know what? Now think of it, like if we're on the media and we're talking about these sort of things, even though that they're anti-black, they show many indications that they've made billions of dollars over the years. When they broadcast live a woman who just had their son die because he got killed by gun violence, and the media is there reporting on it, that drives up ratings because people want to see that. So for some people that are non-black, that's like porn. They like seeing black people in trauma, right? And so when you're seeing all this, you have to sit there and go, well, okay, um, maybe just maybe they're going about this wrong. And then of course the marching, right? The marching, right? Because if a kid does, if he continues with a tantrum long enough, or cries like a baby long enough, then mother's going to come along and give him a bottle, and you know, but the baby never matures to an adult where it says, you know what, to cry to go to the refrigerator and go fix myself something. Yeah, I can do that. So when you start comparing it, right, like there's a very the maturity level match what it requires in order for the 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 results to come. It never has. Show me anywhere on this planet, usually Canada and the US, where marching, this and that, and then all of a sudden the government just came along, gave money, significant amount of money, and gave you your housing. They're going to solve all your problems now, right? The housing, they're going to give you all the employment that you need. They're going to take care of your children's education, all these things. They're not. If you look at white supremacy and you look at the definition of a predator, look what a predator does. A predator does not trust its prey. A predator, it does not, it's always monitoring it, it's controlling it, it's always putting it in a situation where it's always fearful, right? Always looking over its shoulder. You can't build when you have that type of, you're under influence, right? So I'm not even sure if they understand what type of person they're dealing with, right? The mentality, right? I don't know everything about white people, but because of my background, where I was raised and I was, my history, my childhood, I know a lot about white people, but I didn't know a lot about the whole social issues and things of that nature. That came later on before I left my career and all that stuff, right? And then I started connecting the dots, right? That friend, so-called white friend, when I start talking to him about like, hey, wait a minute, some of these things aren't, like it seems like there's this two set of rules here. Like, it's like walking in a casino, and every person that walks in that casino, they never win. Who's going to go to that casino if they know they can never win? Who's going to go to that casino? And then what if that casino said, well, only a certain height, we're not going to use race this time, if they are say 5'7" and shorter, we're going to even put laws in place to ensure they'll never win. And meanwhile, somebody's 5'8", they're winning all the time. Isn't that what's happening in our case, right? So again, this is the same entity that you're expecting to somehow solve your issues, and where you're saying, well, we need to have, they need to have political critters. I've heard those things, and they've made promises and they didn't fulfill them, and things of that nature. At the end of the day, it's an unstable, unreliable source. So one of the conditions, if I ever do a live interview on any of these media organizations, is that them and us cannot be sending two separate messages. See, for the best interest of the community, media, the viewers, is that if you're sending two different messages, that could be damaging, right? But they've had years of saying what they have to say. We're not better off when it comes to reducing youth gangs and gun violence. We need to try something different. And when you're prepared to do that, it has to be exclusive. Because we know, like, there's nothing more that they different because all they're going to tell you is that you come on TV, they're going to say, well, it's getting worse. This is what's happening, blah, blah, blah. More coming over the border. Speaking of the border, this is good, an interesting tidbit. So white supremacy, like what they'll do when they identify a problem that they can, it's not like a market, like it's something like marijuana. And they also just by chance all of a sudden when black males are in jail even now, and they are running they from cultivation all the way up to retail. Okay, how's that possible? It's the same thing with the land. Like, how did you acquire that land? Did you pay for that land? I can't go walk into someone's home and say, listen, I have nowhere to stay. And they say, well, you can take that room over there. And before you know it, I'm killing them off, putting them, warehousing them, or inventorying them, and then saying, well, now it's my property. And any laws that you had in place don't apply. These are the laws that are going to be applied. And I'm engaging all kinds of criminal activities, and people are dying, missing and murdering Indigenous women and Black women, right? But I'm not being held accountable. Right? So when you're looking at all this, you're like, okay, well, it just doesn't, it does not validate relying on these sources to resolve these issues, right? Because the system was designed in order for white supremacists not to have any accountability for their actions. It was designed that way. We do something small, we're going to get punished heavily. They talk about the judicial system and how corrupt it is. I do too. And has it been changed? No. And it probably never will, because it's an industry. Policing, incarceration, and judicial system. Those are $3 billion industries, and all are generating that money because mainly Blacks and Indigenous people are going through those systems. They have no incentive to change it, right? Like, you see, the thing is, what people don't understand is that white supremacists will find ways to monetize problems. They don't want to solve it. They want to generate money from it, right? So, for example, the border. They're saying all these guns are coming over the street. Going back to these anti-youth gangs and gun violence, are interviewing, they're saying more guns are coming over the border, and they're on the streets and all that other stuff. That's true. Well, one, how about stop manufacturing guns? So say you have to stop manufacturing guns, right? No, the manufacturing plant is pumping them up as fast as they can. In fact, in the U.S., there's more guns and more people in the U.S. And you wonder why I have a gun problem over here. So they're saying, well, we have more and more guns. So what we're going to do is we're going to, on that border, we're going to have more border control individuals. Look at all the great jobs they're creating. But for what purpose, right? And those jobs are permanent. You know why? Because they're not controlling the demand for the guns on the other side. Because you think of it, and this is basic economics. And, that's why I know that, when you look at this, you have to really give yourself a head shake when you sit there and go, well, these you're relying on somehow that your existence is going to improve because of the very people that are in everything but takes no responsible for anything, right? If they drove down the demand, then you wouldn't need to have as many people monitoring the border. If over here that more youth had opportunities where they were able to learn how to economically empower themselves, that would drive down the demand. But you notice the government doesn't focus and invest their money in those areas, saying, listen, we realize that we identify you as an at-risk youth, so we're going to make sure that you are the best financial wizard, so you'll never get pulled into gangs. And that would be a fraction of what it's costing to monitor that border, right? The incarceration, that would bring all those things down where they're not going to do it. So, you know, the the ideology of white supremacy is to monetize some of these problems. They have an objective. It's a monster that needs to continue generating money at all costs with no accountability. Again, as I said before, we have people that are, mainly in the anti-youth gangs and gun violence industry, if I'd like to call it loosely, right, are somehow expecting that they're going to solve their problems. They're not going to solve our problem. Never going to happen. They may give you a little bit, but not enough to solve your issues. Martin Luther King said something that was interesting, and I have the video. I might actually put the link on our website. He says, white people help you, but only for so far. Only so far. They don't want to solve your issues, according to him. So, for me, as I see it, is that you can't expect that these things are going to just go away because you're some group, I should say, of white saviors. There are great white people. Let me tell you, I've met so many of them. In fact, they outpace Black people by far when it comes to supporting this initiative. Like, it's literally one extreme to another, right? With Black people come by, they see us, they look at the slide, and they say, "What's this all about?" White person, I've seen it for years. Nobody can tell me any different. I can take you different places. I could show you this. White person will come up, look at the sign, read it. Okay, I want this, 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 and this, and this. They pay for it and they go. Black people, some of them are just, they see us and they will avoid us. We've been at places like, sometimes we've gone to like places like LCBOs and places like that. We see Black people in certain areas of the city where they're driving very expensive cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Land Rovers and things of that nature. And they're not buying. But we're the same people are complaining when we have racism, that we experience it. We don't have that mentality like white people say, if you harm one of us, you harm all of us. We're splintered. And that is a perfect recipe to defeat a group of people. Because this isn't an individual sport, it's a team sport.
Definitely, for sure. And we've seen it for years. We've grown up with it. Our parents, their parents have grown up with it. It has changed in some ways, but overall, it really is just a different face that it's portraying at this point, right? As time moves on. So, but you're right about the mindset and about so much other things. It's a lot for us to have to develop and to get the ball rolling. But starting with the youth is the most important thing that we can do, because it does take a lot to teach an old dog new tricks, right? So it's hard to change the mindset of somebody who is much older and stuck in their ways than changing the mindset of a child who is, so in tune with their imagination, so in tune with possibility and believing that things are possible. So it is really important to start with the children. And so we're excited to hear about all the different initiatives that you're putting out. You are, not only are you guys out there, you're doing your thing, but now you're stepping into a new avenue where you're going to actually be allowing young individuals to come on board and to help to brighten their future. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I think you froze for a moment. Are you
Oh,
there?
Yep, did I freeze?
Yeah, just for a moment. Okay. Yeah, it looks like you know more about this than I do. So we're going to be launching a lawn care and car washing service. It's historic. There's been lawn care or car washing done by kids and things of that nature. And before I get into that, I'm just going to say that the financial district, the community allowed us to figure it out. I think because again, they know, they're aware that not that they know, because I didn't actually tell them, hi, my name is Robert Bennett. This is what we're doing. And by the way, my background is finance and I have many years experience. I didn't say those sort of things. I just told them what the initiative is. And I want them to judge based not on myself, but on the initiative. I want to see how they're going to react. And that's how we operated from day one, right? But the thing is that the financial district, Yorkville, those organizations, they are those allowed us to have the time to develop it and then to figure it out. And I think that if they weren't convinced that we had if I didn't have the knowledge, then I think they would be asking, like, how are you guys doing? Or like, how are you making progress? Why should I make another purchase at this point? But they haven't. This lawn care car washing service, I went with car washing lawn care because it is known that most most people are comfortable, and it's known that kids do these types of things. So it's really designed, in our case, to exclusively employ these at-risk youth. They're paid around 20 to 25 an hour and also taught how to close the wealth gap. So, it becomes more difficult for a gang member to try to recruit somebody who actually can solve their own problems. So, essentially what is happening is the gang leader, gang member is their financial advisor saying, hey, look, I understand you're in financial disparity. Hey, you know what? I was in the same situation you were in. And well, hey, listen, I know you're only 11 years old, but why don't you make this delivery? And that's usually where it starts, because they're not going to have them usually dealing drugs at 10, 11 years old. They probably get them doing deliveries and stuff like that, and they'll work their way up the regs. This is designed with great thought, where I'm thinking, okay, I have to find a way to be able to first immediately address their economic strategy problem, because gang members are hiring all the time and they are able to provide money right away. So, focusing on government isn't going to solve it, right? Because if the government said tomorrow they're going to give you money, that money is not going to be coming for quite some time. What happens between that time and all the way up to when the government uses funding? And how do you know that it's going to come the next time around? And if it's coming from the provincial government, I'm going to use that for example. Maybe it's a liberal government at that point. But what happens as conservatives? Well, if these people are saying that, these politicians have political courage, then you should also know that if it goes from liberal to conservative, that what conservatives do. They're called conservatives because they conserve things, right? So they're going to say, well, the liberal government has been spending all kinds of money, and look, we're in a huge deficit. We need to balance the books. So we're going to start cutting away certain things that we don't think is necessary in order for us to get our books back in order. But the problem with that is usually those things that they cut first are the social issues. Okay. And then the conservatives are going to say, instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have more policing and more tougher laws. You're hearing that right now. So I think that the liberal government on the federal level is hemorrhaging right now, because the head of the leader of the conservative government, his popularity is rivaling Justin Trudeau right now. So if he gets in, then after there's going to be cuts, and then you can't build a community when you have instability from the source of where you're getting the funding. So what happened if the liberal government starts building things, right? And then after, like, housing and stuff like that, conservative government says, well, we can't do anything, so we're not going to continue with that anymore, right? You can't build something or recover or rebuild a community when you're in a political tug of war. You don't want to be in that. You want to have something that has no disruption. So that's why we're offering to these at-risk youth where they will be able to earn income where they will not find themselves in situations where they've been let down. Because remember, in at-risk youth get let down a lot, right? Um, I've seen movies in the past where they say, "Oh, we have this, youth drop in, but we didn't get the funding." Oh, talk about they didn't get the funding. What are you guys doing? We I also think that why aren't these these organizations that are engaging with these kids? Why don't you teach them how to make an honest buck? Part of life. I imagine most of them eventually are gonna be working. Why not teach them how to make an honest buck at a very young age? No, they're relying and waiting for an outside entity to solve all those things. It just doesn't work. And so the car washing service and lawn care service is going to be launched. Well, originally it was supposed to be for May 1st, but the weather, Mayor John Tory, who has done some photo ops with me and stuff like that, he's abruptly resigned, and so we're probably not going to be starting on time. In fact, I posted that the night that he made his announcement, I placed on my website or on our website that I don't think we're going to be able to launch on time. I think that was in February, if I remember correctly. He made that announcement, right? And so it may be probably sometime between now and June 1st. The hard stop would be June 1st. Like I also believe strongly that if we're going to do this, it has to be extraordinary. It has to be something that is going to attract these kids. Say, I want to work there because of the atmosphere and all the things that are being offered. I don't do things where they are average or mediocre. I tend to do things that are going to get people's attention, right? So hopefully, if everything goes well, I have some meetings, one particular, I should say, that may dictate exactly how this is all going to turn out. Very shortly, but also, we're going to be doing corporate sponsorships and stuff like that, because we are at that stage again. If you're going to do these types of initiatives, outreach initiatives, anti-youth gangs and gun violence organizations, there's a certain way of doing things in a unified or an orderly way, right? If you you know if you put it out of sequence, you may not get the ultimate results that you're looking for. So, we wouldn't start in 2011 and start asking for sponsorships, because people say, well, who are you? Like, how do we know you're going to be here in 6 months from now or a year from now? So, for me, the long-term approach towards these things, so that when you do go to war, you have a standard chance to win, right? I realize that you have to make sure that you have a track record where if they happen to say it's hard now, it is extremely hard for any reasonable organization who are actually looking for a way to have an advantage over their competitors to say no to us, because I designed it that way. I built it that way with their team, right? So if a corporation or a business says, well, sounds pretty good, but how long you guys been around? Well, we've been around for 12 years. Right away, what does that tell you? Now, it sounds fairly stable, right? Because if you've been around that long, you must be doing something right. Okay, well, how's your social media? Well, this is something that I haven't even posted yet, but right now, if you look at our Twitter account, a number of our tweets right now have thousands of retweets, thousands of likes on, I'm talking single tweets, and we have dozens and dozens of them. Our engagement right now is as good or better than the top media organizations in the world. Go take a look for yourself. Again, when you have people trying to discredit you, if they're looking at these things objectively, you cannot argue with it because the evidence is right there. All they have to do is go on our Twitter accounts. We have one for Canada, and we have another one that is our main account. And combined, we have over 70,000 Twitter followers. Just over 17 days, we have that some of these organizations that are out there and talking about anti-youth gangs, gun violence organizations don't even have 1,000 Twitter followers. But then you say, well, that maybe on Twitter. What about on Instagram? What about on Facebook? It doesn't matter what platform we're on. You compare, we have a lot more combined than all the rest of them. So, for people who may have their reservations or critiques, negative thoughts. Well, I'm going to rely on and continue to educate people on the fact that we're using economic science. It's got us this far. It attracts a certain type of individual. Why would we change? So, it's allowed us to put us in a position where we're able to offer our lawn care and car washing service. And there's other things that will be coming in after that. So once that's established, because again, I'm looking at the life stages of these youth. So you have a kid, our focus is a 10 to 12 because we want to catch them before they get recruiting gangs. But maybe after he's maybe 14, 15, he doesn't want to do car washing. So we have, or maybe up to maybe 16, whatever that number is. But then after, I also have, you could see on our website, it's not launched yet because we got to get the car wash service up and running and functioning, is a mobile haircutting app. Right now, this is something that's never been done before, but we're going to introduce something, and I already have it all planned out, and you can see some of the details there. Right, so these trucks, fitted trucks, would come into the community itself, and people who need to get a haircut and they don't want to go far distances, every once in a while they get a quick and great haircut at their nearby park or their nearby church. They just walk the dog, go get a haircut, and go home. So these are some of the things that we're working on or about to launch. And at the end of the day, my objective is to be is an employment machine, to provide employment exclusively for at-risk youth that is designed to close a wealth gap, because as long as that wealth gap is still open, there's going to be some form of violence, and in particular, gun violence. We have to get the financial part under control. That will change everything. Well, maybe not everything, but it's going to have a major impact. And that's where I think a lot of these organizations could take note and say, okay, look, you know what, maybe he's right. We got to see if we can try to recruit somebody because we don't like them, right? Whatever, I don't care, right? I don't like them, but at the same time, we should have somebody who has the financial expertise, because if this is what he's doing and it appears that it could work, this would be a huge step in the right direction for us. It would validate their efforts. We get more contacts, more support, but for some of them, the ones that have spoken negatively towards us, they might have a challenge, because if they respond like this to me and I'm a professional, then the next accountant or financial analysts that would like to help would be probably saying, well, gee, I'm not sure. Like you guys, I'm scared to even try to approach you guys. If this is how you're responding to him, maybe you'll do the same thing for me too. And no, I'm not going to do it. You notice that a lot of Black people, they know the gun violence exists, but they keep they're sympathetic at a distance, right? Because some of the people that are there and self-appointed, which I am as well too, I'm self-appointed, people that are involved in reducing gun violence, they're not really good at being able to attract skilled and good talent that can have a major impact, because there are people that they're working with that have certain talents, but there's certain areas that are major areas where they're missing. And the thing is that it's how they receive them when they decide that they want to get involved with. And a lot of times, Black people, we know this, is that we're not even good when it comes to Black leadership.
Mm-hmm. And you're hitting a lot of facts, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. And when it comes to, amalgamating our resources, working together, we are on that. That's exactly what we need to do. But again, we have to work towards changing the mindset when it comes to tearing each other down in our community and always trying to be the person in charge. There's a lot of different issues that we have within our community, but the one thing that I do like about Silence the Violence and Shun the Guns is that you are taking the initiative to start something at the grassroots level and really involving the children, really trying to teach them about financial literacy, how important it is to, make your own money, the ability to be able to make your own money, the ability to be able to think outside the box and try something for yourself. And so I'm sure when other people do view this interview that they will see that it's important. As you said, you don't know everything. And there's other people in other establishments that have other things to contribute to the same movement. It's all about getting the right people with the right agendas all together in the right place and get the ball rolling, because car washes, mobile haircutting, that's phenomenal. You know what I mean? There's a lot of great things that you're already starting with, but I'm sure that there are other great ideas that can contribute to this and add to what you have going on and make it bigger and better. And we can really make the change that we want to see in record-breaking time. Just like, when other communities decide that they want to do something, they can build their buildings and do what they got to do really quickly. We can do that in abundance as well, but we just need to have the right mindset and make the right movements and be honest with each other at its core. And I think, by starting this movement and, sharing your initiative and what you have going on, definitely people are going to jump on board. And this is for anybody out there that has children, sons or daughters that are out there that are looking to make, some money for the summer, doing something that is going to give them a skill. They're going to learn a couple of different things, meet different people. You just never know who you might end up meeting. Opportunities they're always out there. It's important to get them involved. So tell everybody where that they can connect with you. And you mentioned you are on all social media platforms, but let them know what your name is and how they can get in contact with you.
Okay, well, first of all, let me just further define the type of individuals that will be employed. They're at-risk youth. Number two, they have to be with a charity or nonprofit, because if they're not, then it becomes difficult to determine if that kid is somebody that it would be suitable to be employed through us. And they would have to be recommended by the worker that works with those children, and they would be supervising them on site. Okay, so I don't want to go randomly and find a kid in Jane and Finch and say, hey, listen, you're looking for employment. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. Like, we want to hit this thing the ground running, right? So that way we're not going to find ourselves dealing, because not all kids, unfortunately, it's just unfortunate, their family, mental health, whatever it may be, are necessarily suited to do something like this. They may be able to come in later because it's going to be scaled up to about 10,000 kids, right? And you'd say, okay, well, if it's in a location, how that's possible? Well, what happens is that, for example, the Rosedale areas where we're going to be starting in terms of deploying kids. So once we have, because we have some bookings already there already. So once we have enough bookings that can support a kid to work full time, say like June first, hours because clock. Um, Someone will be working after work, right? I mean, after school. So once there's enough bookings to support them so they could be engaged for full-time work, for example, after they get out of school for the summer, then after they will be working in the community. Um, and then the central location is where people can either, if they have apartments or condos, or they don't have the accommodations to do car washing at their homes, they can come there. Or if there's somebody who decides that they will just want to try it out, they can come out and try it out and say, well, this is pretty good. Let me book for the rest of the summer. And then after, once there's enough people in his particular or her community, then after we'd send somebody out, but then they could book, but they can just keep coming back to the location. So that's how it's designed. Now there's details on our website. So you're asked about how would people be able to connect with me. They can connect with us through our website, silencetheviolence.ca. If you're on Instagram or YouTube watching live, those links would be on our website or on those particular platforms. And then there is Facebook, Twitter Canada, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Easy way to be able to access all of them. Just go to silencetheviolence.ca, click on the enter button, go to the bottom, and all the links will be right there.
Fabulous, fabulous. And so honestly, I would just like to thank you so much for coming in and sharing so much information with us. We definitely want to have you back on once you get settled in and you guys have got what you got going on for the summer. I know that you do have a lot of different things up your sleeve for the next coming years as you are rolling out phase 2, I guess, of or I don't know what phase this is, but as you guys are embarking on some new adventures with Shun the Guns, Silence the Violence, sorry, Shun the Guns. And we definitely would love to have you back so that you can share that information with us. But I always like to ask if you have like a quote or something that you kind of go by on a daily basis that keeps you plugging, keeps you motivated.
The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is that successful people do all the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. That's quoted by DeJordan. I can't remember his first name. John Paul DeJordan, I believe is his last name. And throughout the interview tonight, I was talking about other organizations that are out there and what they're doing and what I think they could do. They just choose not to. And I think that the ones that are using a dependency approach are only doing what they feel they're comfortable doing. And at the end of the day, I don't think that they are motivated enough to do what it requires in order to make that significant change, because this requires a power play. We can't take baby steps and expect you're going to win an Olympic 100-meter dash. That's not going to happen. Okay, you may feel comfortable doing that, but you're gonna have to exert yourself and maybe do things that you probably thought you were impossible. So that's where that quote right away that came to mind is it's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. That successful people do all the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. It's a choice.
Definitely. And we see you out here. We see what you're doing, and we appreciate you for it, Robert. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your information with us, your story with us, and silence the violence with us. It's really important that we take this information and think think about how we can unify as a community more and change our personal mindsets. And it starts from within. So it's definitely some inner work that we've got to do, that mirror work, looking at ourselves and really trying to silence the negative chatter inside of our minds so that we can help the youth for tomorrow. So
In order
again,
to heal,
mhm,
we must unite.
100%, 100%. And so again, I can't wait to see how all the initiatives go. Be sure to when you get everything organized and rolling, you send us the post if you'd like us to post with you, or any way that we can support. Just let us know how, and we definitely will do so.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure having an opportunity to share with you what we have done, what we are doing, and what we're about to do. And my thoughts, my ideology, not everyone's going to agree with it. You know, it's my own personal thought, but I've been mute when it comes to media because I want to make sure when I'm ready to speak, I'm speaking from a level of intelligence and education, self-education in terms of observations, things like that. I'm a very observant person, and you're the first one, so I'm hoping that you're going to get a lot of views and you're going to get it's going to increase your social media presence, and we would be glad and honored to come back and share you through what we're doing, and also try to help you improve your social media.
Awesome. Sounds great. I'm definitely looking forward to it. But again, we will definitely be connecting anyways off of this YouTube platform, staying connected. And you always know if there's anything that I can do to support. Personally, I definitely will be there to support you 100%.
Sounds great.
All right, Robert. Well, do you have anybody you want to say what's up to, a shout out or anything? Anybody you want to say hi to?
I kind of alluded to that a few times, but the Toronto Financial District, is bragging. If someone's going to have a problem with me, they're going to say he's always bragging about the Toronto Financial District. But any in the Yorkville area and the upscale areas, and then Etobicoke and Scarborough and Rexdale and Rosedale and the Forest Hill and East York. These are places we've gone to in certain frequent areas, and or we were knocking on doors. I'm giving shout outs to those old individuals, because generally these areas that we are going to, they're not having gun violence. They're just good people who are acute to somebody that they can respect. They don't know me, but they're listening and they're responding. So most of them will never even know that this video broadcast was created, that I'm shouting them out, but I'm shouting them out because they deserve it. Because if it wasn't for them, then you and I probably would be talking, because I'd have to sit there and retool what we're doing in order to try to make some sort of progress. The foundation is extremely strong. It validates what we do, and their intuitions are going to be about to be validated. So that is a huge success for us as a society. That was what my objective was. I figured, what, if we're going to take our chances, I'd rather take my chances with a wider base of options than just focusing on one and saying, well, it's either 100% or zero. We can't afford to do that. So, it's very essential. Maybe it has a lot to do with the fact that I have many years of experience in sales. I speak well, I present myself well. Maybe that might have a lot to do with it as well, too. But at the end of the day, they have to part with their money to make a trade with us, right? And the last thing I should mention is that we do not engage in aid, we engage in trade. That is very important, because the problem is with the Black community. I don't mean to extend beyond this, but this is a very important point. The problem is with the Black community is that when it comes to how people regard us as the Black community, the York University recently did a dollars that is donated to charities. Only 7 cents of that is getting to the Black community. And yet we're expecting somebody to give us the money to get us out of our situation. See, that's where I'm getting at is that, the moment you start talking about, hey, why don't you maybe engage in social enterprise like what we're doing? We're selling items, create something around your brand and try to use that, or, get some chocolate bars, get some stickers of your logo, slap it on there, and get those kids that you're engaging in doing work, real work. I hear that, right? We're doing the real work. Okay, well, you need to teach them how to work, how to self-sustain themselves, and get them going door to door and selling these chocolate bars. I was a kid at 10 years old. I was selling chocolate bars. I won every fundraising event I was in because I just loved it. You wonder why we're sitting where we are, right? And why we're able to sustain and continue to move ahead when we're selling these items. So when we first started out, what we did is that we still do, but and especially in the early stages, we have these buckets. And so that psychologically, they don't realize this, but psychologically, when they buy something, they put in the bucket, they're taking a step to support a Black organization, right? Because it's not any white people or any other non-Black people. There's Black people that are engaging with the public, right? Because if that is established as time goes by, it becomes easier to ask them to do bigger things, right? And then they would say, well, you know what, you guys have been out here for a while and I could see you guys are progressing. You know what, listen, I'll buy 25 wrist bracelets for $500, and they walk away. Those things will happen. We've had big purchases in the past. We have, right? But the thing is that if you don't start to psychologically condition people to do those sort of things, then those things will never happen. See, the thing when we're out there, there's no other organization, Black organization, that's out there engaging the public the way that we are, right? And where they are, they're making, in some cases, very large purchases on the street, sidewalk, maybe in public areas where there's shopping complexes and stuff. It's never happened before, right? But that is setting the stage. So then when we get to the car washing service, and they realize that if you're going to come to use a car washing service, a minimum $100, $50 goes towards a car washing service. The other $50 is going towards purchase of whatever we have to sell, right? There's not going to be that much objective.
Definitely.
See? So, but these things need to be built up to that point. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your viewers' attention.
For sure. And I feel like one step at a time. You guys have already been out here for the last 12, 13 years. And now you're moving on to show us just how long you're going to be in the game for. So it's all about progression. And so we're all here for it. We can't wait to see how it goes.
As long as it takes.
As long as it takes. All right, Mr. Bennett, it was great having you on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
No problem at all. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate you guys. You know how much I care and love for you guys. I definitely just want to I want to let you guys know that we will definitely be here next week. We have another special guest coming on to share their story with us. So be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, and have a fabulous, fabulous week. All right, guys?